Welcome to this episode of the Brush and Soap and Blade Podcast, where we look forward to shaving every day. Welcome to episode 104 of the podcast. Finally made it 2 years running. So this is the 2-year anniversary show. It'll be 2 years in another couple of days, so it's pretty close. It's the same week. So first off, thank you for being here. Thank you for making 2 years possible. It has been a great journey so far. So this show, we've got a letter from David, a heartfelt letter about, well, customer service. So good stuff, very appropriate for this show. A weekend shave of the day. I found a good blog post. In fact, I found 2 good blog posts. I'll tell you all about them. The Labor Day shave of the day. Yeah, I shaved on Labor Day. Shipping a razor. It should be simple. It should be relatively inexpensive. Had to do some work under the house. I'll tell you what I'm thankful for. Wednesday shave of the day. That was this morning. And in fact, between the last couple of shaves of the day, it's rather interesting what I reveal in the Wednesday shave of the day. I didn't have it planned, I swear. Just worked out that way. Really, really amazing. And then a trip down memory lane. Thank you as always for being here. Thank you as always for listening. Good stuff. Let's get on with this thing. I got an email from David. Hey, Rick. In one of your podcasts, you gave more than deserving kudos to Maggard razors. I have shopped almost exclusively with them for 2 years now for several reasons. Selection, price, and above all, customer service. After 2 years, you would think their customer service could not surprise me. Well, I was wrong. About 6 weeks ago, I ordered an Icon Shavecraft Tech. I need and love very aggressive razors. My facial hair demands it, and this thing is about as aggressive as it gets in the DE world. I love this razor. The head looks great. The shaves are close, and it performs wonderfully. The only caveat here, and one that ate at me for weeks, was the knurling and handle were very subpar. They were not up to the quality of the razor's head. Telling myself the head and not the handle dictate the shave worked for a few weeks. Then my father's upbringing got into my head. $100 razor should be better. Not having any other Icon offerings in my den, I wondered, was this normal? I emailed Maggard Razors on a Sunday over a holiday weekend and got a response that day. My pictures were evident to them that my handle was not normal and a new one would be shipped immediately with a prepaid envelope to send the old one back in. I feel like I've been a loyal customer to them and they have treated me right from day one. Shipping times are amazing. Contact is near immediate, and in 2 years, this is the first time I've ever had an issue with the several orders and $1,000 or so I've spent with them. Further, this wasn't their fault. This was a quality control issue with the manufacturer of the product, yet they made it right. Unreal. Imagine if all companies cared and treated their customers as people and not bottom lines. David. Well, David, thank you very much for that email. The folks over there at Maggard Razors do an absolutely fabulous job. Part of the thing that strikes me in your email is the fact that you had your razor for several weeks, not days, weeks. And they still made it right. And it sounds like they did it in their usual aplomb of absolutely no qualms, no ifs, ands, or buts, just we'll make it right. Here you go. This is how we're going to fix it for you. And you're almost left in shock at the speed at which they're able to do that. Maggard's razors, top notch. Thank you very much, David, for the letter. All right, well, we we have survived the long weekend. And in fact, it's not Monday, it's Tuesday. So let's talk about a couple of shaves of the day. Okay. So, yesterday. First off, I'm playing around with something that Joel sent me. He sent me a little stropper unit, a vintage stropper unit from from back in the day called the Twinplex stropper, and it is designed specifically for double-edged blades. And it's a neat little device. It's got a little holder, if you will, for the double-edged blade, and you slip your double-edged blade in there. Hold it in your hand and turn the handle. And as you turn the handle, two rotary drums turn around, and they've got leather on them, and it strops the blade. Now, I tried. I had a razor with a feather blade in it, and that feather blade had been in the razor for, a while. And so I said, let's just go ahead and see what it does. Now, in order to have a better feel for how it does, I went ahead and loaded up my Gillette Red Tip with a Gillette Silver Blue blade, which is the smoothest of the smooth, just to have some comparison. And I proceeded to strop the blade, the feather blade in the Twinplex stropper, which is in amazingly good shape. It's now I had another stropper at one point, and it was a little disc stropper, and it was interesting and everything, but the leather was just trashed in it, and it wasn't even, and it was a good idea. But, I don't know. I kind of like this little Twinplex stropper a little bit better. It seems easier to deal with. The other problem with the disc stropper that I had is that there was absolutely no way to get it apart to fix anything, which just annoys me. I mean, if you're going to make something, make it so that you can, fix it. And then even if the person doesn't fix it, at least they have the opportunity. And it's a selling point. It truly is. Having something that you can't fix is not really a selling point, at least not in my book. Now, it may be in today's throwaway society, but in my book, it's just it's poor design. It really is. Anyhow, the Twinplex stropper, I threw the feather blade in there, and I rotated it around and stropped it a dozen, maybe 20 times. So, a dozen to 2 dozen times. And each time it strops, it'll do one side, and they'll flip it over, and do another side, and flip it over. And so it's just kind of goes back and forth. So, stropped it, took it out gently. That's the one thing that I've noticed about it, is that there's not really a good way to manipulate, if you will, the blade. You kind of got to grab it, and there's not really a good place to grab it without causing undue harm, and so you have to be careful with that. So anyhow, we grabbed it and we threw it in the 1940 Super Speed razor. So I got a Super Speed razor with the strop blade, and the Gillette Red Tip with the Silver Blue blade in it. Okay. Now we go to shaving. All right, so when I did this, started out way back when, we'll call it, I think it was Saturday. Might have been Sunday. Anyhow, one of those days. We lathered up with the Old Spice Musk, and which is the Indian Old Spice Musk, got from West Coast Shaving, the original Shulton formula, and nice, good Old Spice smell with a little bit of musk thrown in, and really good combination. Really enjoyed that. Used the my new Italian Barber Samag brush, and at this point, granted, I have not used this thing as much as my 1305. So my 1305 is like the epitome of broken in. Now, I get that. I understand that. But the Italian barber brush, I'll have to do some research, find out which knot it has in it. But it's a little, I don't know, scratchier. So It's okay. It's just a little scratchier. Now, we lathered up and we shaved, and what I did is I shaved my right side with the strop blade, and I shaved my left side with the Gillette Silver Blue. The one thing that I noticed right off the bat was that the stropped blade tugged a bit more. Oh, that's not good. There was a guy that's right behind me that wasn't paying attention that just crashed into this lady's van, smacked her bumper with his truck. I'm glad it wasn't me. Wow. While I'm doing a podcast, wasn't my wreck. Right next to me. I mean, right next to me. I doubt that'll ever come up on the microphone here, but that's twice. That is twice now, and on the same road, we've had an accident. Interesting. Anyhow, back to the shave of the day and the experience with the Twinplex stropper. All right. So the feather blades, which are phenomenally sharp under normal circumstances and really are not known to tug at all, tugged just a bit. Now, the thing that is interesting is that while they tugged, they gave an exceedingly close shave. So it's kind of an interesting phenomena. Yeah, they tug just a little bit, but again, an exceedingly close shave. So, if the apocalypse ever hits, I'm thinking I could probably go for a long time with a blade if I stropped it. So, that's interesting. So, I drive past a farmer's pasture every day on the way to work, and he's got goats. He's got some goats out. Wow, this has been an exciting morning so far. Car crash, goats out. God, what'll happen next? Jeez. Anyhow, so if the zombie apocalypse ever shows up, I'll probably be able to go for a good long time on just a handful of blades because, well, I've got the ability to strop them. Now, again, they tug. So if you're looking for comfort level, maybe not. However, if you are just, looking for the ability to shave, then yeah. So I'm sitting here thinking, okay, so way back when the frugal-minded, and you have to understand that back then, blades were like pennies a pack. So you had to be pretty frugal to think that you could take a 10 or 25 cent pack of blades and stretch them over the course of time to last longer and longer. But people did it, and I'm thinking this device probably cost, I don't know, $2-3 back in the day, and so it's not necessarily cheap. It's just a curiosity. It's almost like I will spend 10 times more than what I have in blades on the ability to make these blades last longer. Do we have anything like that nowadays? It's just a curiosity. Anyhow, so the shave went very well. Both sides, did a phenomenal job. And one thing that's interesting is I found that with with a little bit more aggression in the razor, with the red silver tip, or if I took like an adjustable or a fat boy and cranked him up to about a 6, I'm getting a closer shave with less effort. So it's it's a curiosity. Because I've always been kind of a number 4 guy, 4 to 5. So I don't know. It's interesting. I don't know if my technique's getting good enough finally after a couple of years that I can do that and not pay the price, or what's going on. So we'll have to experiment around a little bit and figure it out. But it is curious. It's this thing evolves. This thing changes. This thing is, never the same. And that's I don't know, kind of weird. But fun at the same time because it opens up new avenues. So that was the weekend shave of the day. So I ran into a really good blog post this week at nightmare1015.blogspot.com by a gentleman of the name Steve Davidson. It says that the title of it is Why P&G Hates Straights. Here lately I noticed that it has been a really long time since I've bought any disposable DE blades, and it's been well over 1 year since I bought any cartridges, which is bad for Procter & Gamble, because that's where they make their money, cartridge sales. They hate straight razors because you only have to buy them once, and if you learn how to hone and maintain your straight razor, you don't have to buy anything else other than soaps, which cost almost nothing after you buy so many. Once you get around 7 or more creams and soaps and you learn how to hone your straight razors, your shaving costs get canceled out, which means free shaves for life if you don't buy any more soaps, which is the tough part. I don't intend to stop buying soaps. In fact, quite the opposite will occur. Well, Steve, great blog post. Short, sweet, to the point. Yeah, I'm sure Procter & Gamble just absolutely detests, first off, wet shaving in general, because they're not making the money off cartridge razors. You know, if you look at a cartridge razor, it costs pennies to make, you know, and for the amount of money that they charge, it's just an ungodly amount of profit. You know, it does make you wonder, why do they keep them locked up? I mean, they even have commercials joking about the fact that they lock these silly things up. The only reason they lock them up is to protect the profit margins of the companies that make them. Now that's just bad. So anyhow, yeah, you're absolutely right. You know, if you learn how to keep a straight razor in decent shape, and I mean, even if you pay, you know, $20 every now and then to have somebody hone it, that's still, you know, a pittance compared to what they're charging you for cartridge razors at this point. I mean, you know, you look at some of them, it's like, oh my gosh, you got to be kidding me. Anyhow, I thought I'd read that because that is a great blog post. So I ran into another blog post that I thought was very, very interesting. It's the Taylor and Barber blog post, or Taylor and Barber blog, and it is DE Razor Blade Experiment Results. So the blog post goes, this summer I conducted what I thought would be an incredibly easy and straightforward experiment to find the perfect razor blade for my face. I'd been jumping around so much between brands that I had no idea what even worked or didn't work for me. I always thought that the biggest challenge with traditional wet shaving is the abundance of products available. This double-edged sword provides a wonderful variety of wet shaving gear, but it also makes the foray into learning a very daunting adventure. With this in mind, I took the summer to narrow down my selection of razor blades. And so what he did is he did exactly what I would have done. He set the variables so that the only thing that changed was the razor blade. You know, he got face wash, brush, shaving soap, razor, post-shave, so all good stuff. Now, he then goes on, and he's got, 10 different razor blades that he's looking at. So, Kai stainless steel, the Gillette greens, blacks, silver blues, feathers, Persona reds, Astra superiors, Voxod Teflon, Rapira Platinum, and Balzano Super Inox. So, a good selection of what I would consider, you know, premium quality blades. And he goes on to say, and I really found this interesting when I read it, is that, you know, first, understanding the importance variety plays in the enjoyment of shaving. He says that, I love the Parasso green shaving soap, but several weeks in, I began to tire of using it. And by the time I had gone all 10 weeks, I didn't want to use it anymore. Yeah, absolutely right. And that's one of the reasons that I bounce around all over the place. And for me, what I've done is I've the variable of the brush, I've got it narrowed down. It's not quite solid and stable, but it doesn't jump around too awful much. The razors, well, they jump around all over the place. But if I do use a razor, the blade is relatively consistent. So I understand exactly what you're going through. And yes, you're absolutely right. Variables are, well, like you say, they're a double-edged sword. It is exactly that. It's, you can have a lot of variety, but, it all, well, just complicates things. And if something doesn't go right, you don't know if it's the brush, the soap, the razor, the blade, the post-shave, what is it? Bad day, hungover, you don't know. Because there's just too many variables out there. And so I thought that this was done very, very well. Now, he goes on to say that the most overrated blade, in his opinion, is the feather. Okay. He says he only gets about 3 shaves on it before it kind of goes south on him. Maybe. I can usually get about 5 out of mine, and then, it's like, they go. He really likes the Gillette greens, and he likes the Kai stainless steel. Okay, good stuff. Now it's funny. For the most part, his rankings are not too far off of mine. So yeah, it works. Anyhow, they posted that there on September 3rd, and I ran into it and thought to myself, you know what? That is also another great blog post. So yesterday's shave of the day was very nice. It was Labor Day, and I had a very nice Labor Day shave. And in fact, it was, well, a step down memory lane because it was a sandalwood shave. Now, I usually don't use sandalwood. I love the smell. I absolutely adore the smell and the fragrance of sandalwood. But I don't use it. I don't use it often because I find I have an allergic reaction to sandalwood. And so because of that, I don't use it. So Labor Day's shave of the day was sandalwood, specifically with Castle & Forbes cedarwood and sandalwood essential oils shaving cream. The other thing that I did is I used my large brush. I used my large Samog SOC brush. And a couple things were, revealing about that setup. Okay. First off, loading the brush was like absolutely no problem. I mean, you dip it a couple of times, just touch it, if you will, to the shaving cream, which is truly a cream. It is not a semi-solid or anything. It is truly a cream. So loading the brush is of absolutely no problem, no issues there. The thing that I found interesting is that after soaking the large Samog brush in hot water to soften it up, it retains heat, pretty much like nobody's business. I mean, that's, I had always heard that the larger brushes retained heat, but, not really having one, I didn't have something to compare it with. Now I have a larger brush. Yeah, it's a boar brush, but it's still a larger brush. And yes, it does retain heat. Okay. So the lather, of course, in typical Castle & Forbes fashion, was spectacular. It really is. It was just a fantastic lather. And along with that fantastic lather, the cushion and the glide are just, absolutely top-notch. They really are. And to a certain extent, I kind of, and I know it's not quite the same, but it's similar to the performance of like an Art of Shaving, which is also a fantastic performer. So it's curious. While they're not, quite artisan level products, the performance is just fabulous. So, all right. I use the setup again with the stropped blade and the Gillette Silver Blue, and each side, doing its own thing. And I'm going to do this for a while just to see. So far, I haven't had any issues. There was a little bit less tugging on the stropped side than on the other side, and I've we'll see. We'll probably use it for, I don't know, 3 days or so, 2-3 days, and then we'll strop it again and just see, just to kind of compare. And hopefully, and I'll have to remind myself, I'll change out the Gillette blade after about a week, which is my normal. And it'd be interesting if you're sitting there with a strop blade, comparing it to a normal blade, and time goes on, and you just kind of lose track of the original good blade that you're supposed to be changing out, and realize that both blades have degraded, but they've done it on a consistent level, and you just didn't take notice. So, anyhow, the shave of the day with the sandalwood was just absolutely fabulous. It really was, and it's one of those things where when you don't do something for a while, and then you go ahead and throw the sandalwood in, it really makes for a pleasant experience. Now, I didn't have any redness, but I was starting to feel just a little bit of a burn. Now, under some circumstances, I would associate that with razor burn. But in fact, I don't know if it was razor burn or if it was irritation from the sandalwood soap. It was interesting, though, because I was feeling it a little bit more on the side that I was using the strop blade, which kind of, lends credence to the tugging and the fact that maybe the strop blade is not giving just quite as smooth a shave. It does kind of, support that theory. So we moved on with life and finished up the shave, and it was a very nice shave, and had a good time for the rest of Labor Day. All right, so I have been having some fun. I was talking about a razor, and I think it was on Facebook, and somebody picked up on which razor I was potentially talking about, and made mention of the fact that they would like to try it just because of the fact that, it's a rather gentle razor, and they're having a rough time with some other razors out there. Okay. So I proceeded to innocently go down and at least research how much it would cost to ship to them. And, of course, just to make it interesting, the person that I'm shipping to is in Queensland, Australia. And so, it's one of those things where under normal circumstances, normal shipping is, probably inexpensive, but they don't offer you normal shipping. They just offer you the express shipping, which is like, 4 arms, 3 legs, your firstborn, and your neighbor's kid. But you get all these things, you get tracking, you get, you can tell when it's there, and guaranteed delivery, and blah, blah, blah. It's like, I just want to mail a package, and it's a small package at that. It's a razor. You're talking about something that is, tiny, and realistically, you're talking about something that weighs less than a half a pound. Oh, we can ship that, and we can guarantee it'll be there in 3 days for, $50, $60, $70. Well, it's a razor. It's not worth 50, 60, or $70. It's worth like about 25. Oh, well, that's what we offer. Okay, you don't offer just, normal shipping, you put a postage stamp on it and off it goes. You'd have to go somewhere else to do that. Okay. I will keep searching. So, we kind of talked back and forth about it, and I have come to the conclusion that if I'm going to send the thing first class, if at all possible, and we will just, I'm just going to throw it in a box and I'm going to ship it. And it'll show up when it shows up. There's not any tracking associated with it. And, it's one of those things where if it gets lost in the mail, oh, well, so be it. It was an experiment. By gosh, at least I can say I tried. It is rather amazing. This is supposed to be a global community. You would think that shipping back and forth would not be that big a deal. Now, I understand air freight. Okay, I understand there's costs associated with air freight. Okay, no problem. Put it in a flipping container, put it on a container ship or a boat somewhere, and send it over. Granted, it'll take a while, but it shouldn't cost that much. It's just, I don't know. It's amazing. We were able to ship stuff all over the world in World War II to get packages and letters and mail to our people, and yet the U.S. Postal Service can't ship something to another country without, having conniption fits. I don't know. Well, it's not just the U.S. Postal Service. It's UPS, FedEx, DHL, all those guys. It's just curiosity. You would think you would want to promote international trade back and forth. Oh, wait a minute, I forget. If you promote international trade, you want to do it on a big scale, which involves logistics and boats and things like that. If you promote the international trade on a small scale, like with letters and small packages and, normal postal services, then that benefits the entrepreneur, and, well, we can't have that, can we? Oh, Lordy. I am a cynical person today. It happens. It just really happens. It is amazing when you look at what's going on around us and all the finger pointing and blame games and, oh, geez, it's incredible. Anyhow, I'm cynical. I'm cynical about, well, just about everything. It's, if it's out here, yeah, I'm probably cynical. Oh, well, it happens from time to time, and, as long as it doesn't happen all the time, if it's just a rare occasion, it's not bad. It just kind of puts a different spin on things, makes you think a little bit, and sometimes when you get going and you're kind of in a groove, and maybe a humdrum groove, if you will, you realize that the cynicism sometimes pulls you out of that and smacks you about the head and shoulders and says, hey, pay attention. It's actually working like this. And sometimes that's what we need. It's like a good stiff aftershave in the morning. Kind of wakes you up. So, I was up under the house the other day. We'd bought a new piece of furniture, and we needed to move some things around in the living room. And in doing that, one of the things that we needed to do was move some of the cables and things for the television and internet and things like that. So I had to go about and patch some walls and drill some holes and move some things about. Now, in the process of moving things about, particularly in the crawl space, some people would know the area as a basement. However, here in the South, we don't necessarily or generally have basements. We have this nifty little thing called a crawl space, and that's about what it is. It's about enough to crawl around in. You can't stand up in it, and that's how you get under the house to move things about and to make things happen under there. Now, you do at least have the opportunity, unlike some homes that I lived in at one time in Florida that had slabs, so there is nothing underneath. And good gosh, help you if you ever have a plumbing issue, because the plumbing actually goes through the slab. Yeah, it can be bad. So here I am crawling around underneath the house, drilling holes and moving wires and everything. And I haven't been under the house in a while. Now, it is, coming into fall. And so there have been a lot of, bugs out this year, just to be quite honest about it. And the mosquito population has been fairly rampant. Well, as you can imagine, mosquitoes being rampant and crawl space vents being open, granted they have screens, but, still, there are spiders and spider webs everywhere in the crawl space. Okay. Now, spiders don't, just completely freak me out. Spider webs kind of annoy me, but they don't freak me out. So I don't mind being under there and crawling around, but I must say, so I'm crawling around and I'm under the house and I'm getting covered in dirt and insulation and spider webs and just everything. And the one thing that dawned on me, while I'm underneath there sweating profusely in the humidity and heat that's under the house, I am so thankful to be, clean shaven. I could not imagine the absolute mess and just annoyance that if I had a full beard and mustache, having cobwebs and spider webs and insulation and sweat and dirt and everything else. That would not be fun. It just wouldn't be fun at all. It reminds me, I've back in the day when I was in the military, it was back before they banned beards. Now, you still had to get a good seal on a gas mask, so guys would wear beards, but, you would carry around a little thing of Vaseline, so you'd slather it on and keep your beard fairly thin, and you'd slather on the Vaseline so you get a good seal. And on a ship, when you're not doing just a whole lot, you got some oil, you got some water, but for the most part, generally, it's not muddy, it's not nasty, it's, I'm going to say relatively clean. Okay, I could see a beard in that situation. Now, on the other hand, Army, Marines, something like that, where you're potentially in the mud, crawling around, dirt, filth, everything else, I don't know. That would be rough with a beard. I just, no. I don't think I could go there. Mustache, maybe. Beard, no. I don't think I could do that. It would be more of a maintenance nightmare than imaginable. So, it kind of brought me back to those kind of days of, all the times and all the things that I've worked on and struggled with and been into, and when I am just happy, gleefully happy almost that I am clean shaven and can get rid of the gunk and grime and stuff easily, quickly, and effectively without any muss and fuss. A beard, you may have to comb it out, you wash it out, blah, blah. It's like for me, I walk in the house and grab a towel and wipe my face off, and I'm in pretty good shape. And granted, it took more than that after the episode with the spider webs. But it still wasn't too bad. So, I don't know, for me, because I like doing stuff, I like crawling around and getting dirty and probably going in places that at my age I probably should think twice about. But, there you go. Just kind of the way I'm made, and kind of glad I'm clean shaven so that when it comes to cleaning up, it's a little easier. Well, today's a rather special day. Today, it's Wednesday, first off. It's Wednesday morning, and today is a special day because today is when I'm going to work on and publish for tomorrow the 104th episode of the Brush and Soap and Blade podcast. Quite the milestone. 2 years. In fact, I was looking at the blog, and it was this week, 2 years ago, that I started my blog, the Brush and Soap and Blade blog. So, which then eventually turned into a podcast about, well, I don't know, 2 weeks later, week later, something like that. But, yeah, 2 years. All right. So that's kind of neat. Let's talk about the shave of the day this morning. Shave of the day, like I've been saying, I've been using the little, the little stropper, the little 1950s, 1960s stropper that I have for double-edged blades, and I've been stropping a little feather blade. Okay, so I re-stropped the blade in this little device, and again went up against the Gillette Silver Blue. Now, the Gillette Silver Blue I have not changed out, so it is still the original Gillette Silver Blue that I've got about 3 or 4 shaves on at this point. The strop blade is a feather blade that's got, well, probably a few more shaves and now some, 2 episodes of stropping. So I put it in the stropper and proceeded to turn the handle about 20 or 30 times and strop the blade. So you're, talking 10 strops aside or something like that, and just to see what the impact or effect is. Okay, so I threw that in the super speed, lathered up with Basilica. Basilica is kind of a step back in time because if you go all the way back to the blog, the first soap, the first shaving cream that I ever talk about is the Castle and Forbes cedarwood and sandalwood shaving cream that I used yesterday. The second one is Basilica. Now, I didn't plan this. I really, really didn't. I shaved, I had a moment, and I went and I was looking at the computer while my coffee was making and just wanted to reflect and look back at what had been. And noticed that, lo and behold, the first one was the sandalwood and the second one was Basilica. Rather cool. Obviously the subconscious mind is working. So lathered up with Basilica, used my 1305 brush, and I was thinking about using my bigger brush, but decided, I want to go with my 1305. And so lathered up with that. Great lather. Really, really nice lather. Although I must admit that in comparison with some of the other lathers, and it's probably my fault because I didn't load it long enough, but what I found was by the third pass, things were getting, well, just a bit, I'm not going to say thin, but scant. I had enough, but it was just. So either it's very precise and judicious use of shaving soap, or I just didn't load the brush quite enough. And that in and of itself is, just a tad telling because I haven't had that problem with a lot of my soaps. And so it's kind of reminiscent of some of my earlier experiences as I was trying to figure out soaps and things like that and what makes them tick and how everything goes. Each soap is, well, just a touch different. And you got to take that into account. And if you switch and swap up and everything else, be prepared for some lathers that are pouring out of the bowl and some lathers that, well, are just a bit scant. So, with that said, we proceeded with the shave of the day, again with the stropped feather blade on the right and the Gillette Silver Blue on the left. Now, the Gillette Silver Blue is in a red tip Gillette, and the feather is in a 1940s Super Speed. So, with razors within 10 years of each other, both Gillette, and proceeded to do 3-pass shaves. Now, again, the predominant feel, the face feel of that strop blade was, oh my gosh, this thing is rough. Have you ever seen one of the old-timey wood saws, the real long ones, the ones that, from time to time somebody will find and they'll hang on a wall as a decoration, or some people actually still use them, the big crosscut saws. Yeah, with the teeth that are like, 2, 3, 4 inches long. Yeah, it felt like that. Not quite that bad, but pretty darn close. I mean, it was noticeably rough. Okay? But it was curious. Okay, so the right side was rough. First pass was like, oh my gosh. Second pass was a little better. Third pass was okay. Over on the Gillette Silver Blue, which is known for its smoothness, okay? The first pass was just like butter. Second pass was, well, even better. And the third pass was, well, yeah, it was perfect. I mean, just wonderful shaves. Okay, so that's the Gillette Silver Blue. At the end of the day, when I rinsed off, both sides felt exactly the same. Exactly. I mean, there was no difference. There was no ability to tell that one razor performed better or worse. It was like I had shaved with the same blade all the way across. All right. So let's take it to step 2 and let the alum tell the story. Grab the block of alum, got it wet and applied to face, right side first. For the most part, nothing. One little spot over on the left-hand side where I use the Gillette Silver Blue. All over the face, nothing, except for one little spot. Okay, so face feel of being exceedingly rough resulted in a very acceptable shave with no razor burn or other issues. Okay, color me confused. I had expected. My expectation going into this thing is that the strop would, the little twin plex strop would make the blade, well, rougher. I would get bad shaves with it, and I would proceed to have irritation and razor burn. None of that has occurred, although I have had a very rough shave. Okay, so again, it goes back to, if I happen to be in the zombie apocalypse, I will keep the, a razor and the little twin plex stropper in my possession because, well, yeah, it will get the job done. And, you can imagine that with the stropper, you could probably keep a blade going for a long, long time. Now, on the other hand, blades are cheap. So I'm holding off with the stropper until the zombie apocalypse because blades are cheap. And the level and amount of discomfort that I felt on the first pass of that shave this morning basically got to the point where if I had to do that every day, shaving would once again be just miserable. I would not enjoy it. I would not have fun. I would not like it. And I wouldn't have anything to talk about. So, okay. Do the stroppers work? Yeah. However, I am, well, I don't know, somewhat convinced that they were prone to marketing hype. In that if I could convince somebody that I could keep a blade going forever and ever and ever, and it would only cost, the same amount as a half a year's worth of blades or more, then I could sell these things all over the place. And wouldn't that be great? So I'm sure that many, many, many of these things went to Christmas presents and birthday presents and novelty gifts and things like that. And, when you're talking about, as 100 million, 200 million people that we had back then in the country, somebody made a big chunk of money. But it's not a bad idea. It just, I don't know. It just doesn't work real good. Now, maybe it's the leather. Maybe if I broke into this thing and changed out the leather, but yeah, nah. I'll keep it for the zombie apocalypse. Oh, a trip down memory lane. Wow, what an adventure this has been. And that's exactly what it's been for me. It's been an adventure, this journey. You know, I started this journey about 2 years ago. It started way back when, and it started as a blog post. And it started as a blog post on WordPress. I'd never done anything with WordPress before. I thought, well, okay, and you know, I was excited and invigorated by this new thing called wet shaving. I'd been shaving, you know, just kind of the old humdrum way. Well, maybe a little different than some, but kind of a humdrum way for me. Heck, I'd been doing it for the last 20 years. And then I went to an antique shop and got a vintage Gillette razor. And next thing I know, I'm doing something different. I'm doing something called, well, wet shaving. And, wow, that's different. And I was excited about it. And I started looking at things, well, just a little bit differently. And so I started a blog post. And again, I'd never done anything with WordPress before. So even having a blog post was well, new and different for me. That evolved, you know, one of the first things that I did was, well, the challenge, because I was convinced that wet shaving was, yeah, the greatest thing since sliced bread, actually even better than sliced bread, in my opinion, in most instances. And so I started looking at things, and one of the first things that I put up was, well, it was called the challenge. And what I did is I took some lather that I had made with some Castle and Forbes cedarwood and sandalwood shaving cream versus, well, goo in a can, just to see. And you got to go to the blog post to see it, because the amount of water that is in those two things, between the foam of a wet shaving lather and the foam of goo in a can, the amount of water that is in the lather that you make, you know, in traditional wet shaving methods is just, well, phenomenally better, more moisturizing, and there's more of it, and you know, it's just, and I wanted to show that. I wanted to, well, you know, let people know. Yeah, so it started out kind of like that, and then I got to the point where I realized I would rather talk about things than, well, type. I'm a better talker than I am a typist. It goes smoother, it flows smoother, and typing, well, I mean, I can do it, but it's just, I don't know. No. I'm much better at talking. So, you know, way back then, you know, one of the first things that I talked about was Queen Charlotte soaps, because, well, that's what I had. I'd bought a bunch of samples from Queen Charlotte, and so, yeah, that's what I had. And so, you know, I did a couple of podcasts. I put them up. I found a podcast host called Podcast Gardens, and they become important later on in the story. But you know, at the time they were a free podcast host, and things were good. Worked good. And if you go to one of my older posts, and all my older podcasts and posts and everything are up there on the blog, and if you go there in the original episodes, the first thing after the title is you come down and you see a link, and the link, it has the title of the show in it. And it's got, you know, an episode or something like that. But what that does is that links you to the show over in Podcast Gardens. And they're all still there, all the way back from episode 1. So, you know, if you want to hear the beginning, if you will, yeah, granted, they're not that good. But if you want to hear all the way back from the beginning, you can go back and do that. And it's kind of fun. It's, at least for me, I enjoy it, being able to kind of, well, trip down memory lane, if you will. You know, one of the things that I instituted way back when that quite honestly I ran out of is Razor of the Week. I used to do a different razor every week, and part of the challenge was to go and, well, find a razor that I could do for Razor of the Week. And so that was kind of fun. And we did that for, oh gosh, probably almost a year, at least 3/4 of a year before we kind of, well, ran out of steam on that one, as you can imagine. I mean, that's a lot of razors. Now, one of the things that was interesting upon reflection is, people joke about the fact that I talk about salsa bowls all the time. And, for me, the salsa bowl is a great lather bowl. You take a salsa bowl for $1.50 and take a piece of 60 or 80 grit sandpaper and roughen up the inside, and voila, you've got yourself a really nice lather bowl, retains heat, and if you drop it or if you knock it off the sink, it's no big deal. Now, I understand if you had, because I have a couple of fairly nice ceramic, pottery type lather bowls. They're nice. I understand that. But the thing that's interesting is that 9 times out of 10, when I reach for something to make a lather in, I'm reaching for a salsa bowl. It's really rather, I don't know, strange. If you don't like salsa bowls, I'm good with that. But the thing that's interesting is that I talked about a salsa bowl in episode 3. That's 100 episodes ago. That's a long time. And it surprises me even that I talked about the salsa bowl all the way back then. And so, yeah, I've been going on about it for a while. I got my Twitter account around that same time, around episode 3, and so that was kind of fun. One of the things that I started doing is there was a guy at work who was getting into wet shaving, and when we first started talking about his experiences, we put it in a segment called New Shaver Update. Well, the new shaver update, he graduated at some point and became the sophomore shaver. And he's still out there as the sophomore shaver. And I really, really appreciated the fact that we could, have some of this journey together. And he's off doing other things now. He still wet shaves, but he's gotten into Jeeps and things like that. And he is having an absolute blast. And I couldn't be more happy for him. I mean, really, that's what all of this is about, right? I mean, if you're not having fun, you got to kind of look at things and go, okay, what do I need to change here? Life is supposed to be fun. So, it was not too long after that, and I'm thinking right around episode 9 or so, that I took that salsa bowl that I had started off with in episode 3, added a $3 berry bowl to it that I also picked up at Walmart. They happen to fit perfectly together, and voila, all of a sudden, I've got a do-it-yourself scuttle for about $4.50. Now, I have used that scuttle on many, many occasions, especially when it's cold outside, and it does a pretty good job. Now, because I don't have an expensive scuttle, I don't have something to compare it to, but it does do a very, very nice job of warming a lather. And so that was kind of, I don't know, a revelation for me. And I know that there were a lot of readers listeners, but at that time it was both readers and listeners because I was still keeping up with the blog posts. And if you notice, what I was doing is I was writing. I was either talking about it first and writing about it afterwards, or the other way around. But I had blog posts for every single one of my podcasts, and so it was kind of like my podcasts were the collection of the blog posts for the week, or the blog posts were a collection of the podcast segments for the week. Depending on how you want to look at it. But I did that for quite a while. I really did. And again, it's one of those things that if you go back to those old episodes, you can tell the old episodes up until episode 12. Episode 12, I stopped doing the blog, if you will, and it just became a podcast. Because it was just getting to the point where it was kind of silly. Nobody was, well, at least I didn't think so. Nobody was reading the blog posts that I was putting up there. They were just listening to the podcast, which is exactly what a podcast is intended to do. And so I went ahead and on episode 12, I stopped doing the blog posts. Now, again, if you go to those old posts, it's funny, you can tell what they are because every single one, the picture, the front image, if you will, the featured image is a microphone, which is in fact the original and still current microphone that I am using. It's a picture of the microphone with the word podcast on it. Not terribly original, but, you know, when I was doing all these other blog posts, it you know, kind of got the point across, I suppose. So, you know, episode 12, we finally said, all right, well, I'm done with this. We're not typing anymore. We're just talking into the microphone and having a good time. Somewhere around episode, I guess it was episode 34, I stopped putting that microphone up and started actually using the featured image that WordPress allows you to use. Now, keep in mind, the whole time I'm using Podcast Gardens, and I've got it up on iTunes, and it's in Stitcher, and things are running smoothly. I mean, we're just kind of going like gangbusters and talking about all kinds of stuff, different razors, different brushes, different razor blades, soaps of all types and varieties. Great time. You know, I started doing interviews, episode 39 and 40. I did a split interview with Douglas Smythe and Ryan Stephen Green from Mustache and Blade, and you know, kept on going. Chris Bailey from the Shaving Evangelist, YouTube fame, was in episode 42. You know, it was really going good. And in fact, episode 50, one of my best, well, at least one of my favorite rants, because I do have a tendency sometimes to throw a rant in there from time to time, was the Obliviata. And there had been some things that have happened, and I just looked around and said, my gosh, everybody's oblivious. I am surrounded by the Obliviata. And coined that phrase, and there was just something about it at that time. It was a wild time in the podcast, and things were just going gangbusters, and I was having a blast. And then, of course, around that same time, everything kind of went to heck in a handbasket. Podcast Garden started messing up. My iTunes feed was whacked. My shows weren't getting updated. I couldn't get anything out of my podcast provider. They weren't offering any solutions or help or anything. I'd been fighting with this for a while. It was just, you know, I had an interview with Chris Cullen from Katie's Bubbles thrown in there, and it was just, I had to do something, and I had to make a decision. So I did. I moved the podcast. I moved the podcast from Podcast Garden over to Libsyn. And Podcast Garden was free. Libsyn is a paid host. So I pay them, and they host my show, and so far it has been absolutely flawless. And in fact, they offer some features that Podcast Garden didn't. And in fact, I don't really have any animosity toward Podcast Garden. It was more of a timing issue. You know, you hate around the time of your 1-year anniversary for stuff like that to happen. It's just kind of distracting. But I honestly think at the time we were growing in size, and they didn't know how to deal with it. That's my opinion. I may be wrong, but I don't think they knew how to deal with it. They had shows that somebody had done 3 or 4 episodes, and that was it. And they were like 15-minute shows. I was doing hour-long shows, and I had the first ones weren't an hour long. They were like 15 minutes, half hour, somewhere in that neighborhood. But it eventually got up to an hour-long show, and I was doing once a week, and I'd had I had 50 of them up there. I don't think they knew how to deal with the volume. And in fact, I say it was free. It started out free. I think I ended up paying them like $20 at one point, just because I was downloading more than I was supposed to or something like that. But it, for all intents and purposes, it was free. It was also around that time, around the 1 year point, that I started my YouTube channel. And that has been a really, really great success. So my YouTube channel at this point has 330 subscribers, and I've had almost 5,000 views, which when you think on top of the podcast, that's pretty huge. It's really amazing. I never would have suspected that I would have that many folks on YouTube. Now, granted, there are guys out there that will absolutely blow those statistics away. I understand that, and quite honestly, more power to them, because they're doing a great job out there, and I enjoy what they do. But at the same time, for a podcaster, having a different medium and a different way to get his podcast out, I'm pretty stoked. I mean, that's good stuff. So, episode 54 came around. I've interviewed a couple of people at this point. I even get Khan from Shave the Man, and it's really, really kind of cool. And then, I don't know, life got in the way a little bit. Although by episode 58, I did do an interview with Soap Commander, which was really cool. All the interviews, I love doing interviews. And for me, it was more an issue of trying to set up the time. There's a lot of time that goes into interviews. There's a little bit of time to set them up and do that, but then there's also some time, beforehand and afterwards, and editing and things like that. So it's a little bit extra time, and it got to the point where, I just couldn't. I'd love to have the time to do them again, because I truly love talking to people, and I enjoy asking them questions and getting their viewpoints and things like that, and it's always been fun, and I enjoy it. I just haven't done it in a long time, just because I haven't had the time. It's one of the reasons that later on I'll talk about it, but I got myself a new recorder and started doing them in a different location just to make it a little bit easier. So around episode 64, which was, I don't know, not that far back, but we did something that, I told myself I didn't want to have sponsors. And one of the reasons that I didn't want to have sponsors is I didn't want to necessarily be beholden to anybody. If somebody's stuff was like really stinky, I wanted to be able to say, hey, this is not good, and not feel bad about it. It's just, plus the other thing is that, quite honestly, I know I've got a lot of listeners, and I appreciate each and every one of you, because quite honestly, if it wasn't for you guys, I wouldn't be doing this. But at the same time, the other reason that I never took sponsors is because I never thought I gave a sponsor enough value for whatever I would potentially charge them. Maybe I'm wrong with that, but that was just kind of my thinking on it. I value you guys as, your time and your efforts. And so, I didn't want to have paid advertisements. Now, on the other hand, one of the things that I have done, and I will still do, and if anybody's out there listening and wants to do this, contact me. A long time ago, one of the things that kind of upset me a little bit, in fact, even back in the beginning when I got into this, is that as soon as I became a podcaster, just doing reviews on stuff that I had bought, all of a sudden the forums and such wanted to charge me $300 and more just to be on their forum. Okay, so if I am an entrepreneur, if I am a guy that's making soaps in my garage, okay, I have put all my time, my energy, and my effort into making those soaps. Now I have to get them out into people's hands, but before I do that, people have to be aware that they're out there. in my mind, in my opinion, for something like a soap or a brush or something that realistically the profit margin isn't really that large on, especially when you're starting out, having, say a half a dozen forums charging you $200 to $300 or more just so you can be on their forums and say, hey, without even being able to really advertise yet what the heck your product is. That just doesn't sit well with me. That is not, for me, that's not the way this community grows. The way it grows is that, if you've got a product, you need to get your voice out and let people know that you have it and that it's available. And quite honestly, let the market decide whether or not you become popular or not. If people like your products, you will succeed. If they don't, well, you may not. You may have to change your business model. But the thing is that just getting that word out, especially as an entrepreneur, you should not be forced, if you will, to have to hand over a sizable chunk of change at that point in your budding business to do that. So if, what I started doing is the advertisements that I put on my show, they've all been free. I haven't charged anybody for them. And if you've got a product, if you've got a blog, if you've got something shave related and you want to advertise it on the show, give me a call, send me an email, and we will work it out and we'll get you on the show. It's free of charge, always has been. As long as I'm here, always will be. So just one of the things I feel rather passionate about. So, and this is, of course, a trip down memory lane as we go. So anyhow, around episode 64, we did a podcast, Brush. We joined up with a young man who was doing brushes, and Nathan Clark, and he did the 2015 podcast brush, and it is an absolutely gorgeous brush. It's yellow and black, so happens to work out great for me because I used to live in Pittsburgh back in the glory days, and it was in fact a kind of Steelers colors, which I really liked. The other thing that I liked is that it was made out of Osage orange, which was back in the Indian days, it was the wood that they made their bows out of. It was exceedingly prized for its strength, which is also kind of cool. And anyhow, we went and put together a brush, had a great deal on the brush. A little bit of the proceeds went to the podcast to I don't know, take a little bit of the burden off as far as hosting the podcast. And actually what I did is I spent it on product so I could keep on talking about other stuff. Because for me, this is a hobby. This is fun. People spend $100, $200 on a razor. I spend it on the podcast. It's no big deal. So we have been going for 2 years at this point. I've had a great time. I've drifted a little bit. Some of it's about shaving, some of it's about some of the other stuff that I do. Whether that be scouting or being in the outdoors, playing around with leather, boots, things like that. Axes, knives, anything sharp and pointy is, absolutely fabulous as far as I'm concerned. I have an interest in vintage watches, in automatic watches, manual watches, the old kind, the kind that don't have a battery, the kind that you have to wind or move your wrist. Fountain pens, I absolutely adore fountain pens. Always have. The ability to sit there and draw and write well is something that I've always strived for, and I keep practicing. Whiskeys, scotches, bourbons, good alcoholic beverages, beers, making it, wine, those kind of things. What I would consider, guy stuff, if you will. I have sprinkled more and more of that into the podcast as time goes, and it's not because I'm losing my interest in shaving. It's just that after talking about it for 2 years, to me, to my head, to my mind, I've said it before. And so it doesn't feel right saying it again. So every now and then, I find myself every now and then, I'll shave and jump in the truck. that was one of the things. I bought a digital recorder so I could actually record in the truck. Now, it's not exactly the same sound quality as the microphone that I'm using now. I understand that. I equalize it as best I can to get it close. But quite honestly, it's not, and I know that. But at the same time, I thought, and for right or wrong, I thought that it would be better to have passion than sound quality. And when I'm in the truck thinking about those things, and it's the only thing that I have to think about, I have a tendency to be much more passionate about it than if I tried to remember it that evening or during the weekend or something like that and speaking into this microphone. So trying to get a little bit closer to that passion that drives us, that makes us, well, tick, like that classic vintage watch. Those are the things that make it fun and make it special. And quite honestly, for me, this has always been fun. This has always been special. My wife gets annoyed at me from time to time because there's shaving gear everywhere. It's kind of, blown up all over the place, and I keep getting more, and I don't get rid of any of it. It's just, I have it around, and it's like I said the other week, it's in just about every room. And the amazing thing is that she puts up with it, and every now and then we'll be out and she'll see something and she'll say, "Hey, you should get that." What for? Well, for the podcast. So I don't know if she enjoys it, but she mentions it to all her friends, and so it's kind of nice that she does that as well. So I am blessed, absolutely blessed in that regard. In the future, I'm looking forward to doing things like meetups. I have the ability now to take the podcast on the road, so I have a couple of microphones, and the recorder will host both of them, and a couple of microphone stands, and some other things that I want to experiment with, and so go to meetups and do interviews and things like that at meetups, which I think would be absolutely cool. Talk to people that are out there doing it instead of just hearing me all the time. And it would be cool for me, too, because, like I said, I love doing interviews. I truly do. I love talking to people. I'll bring you more stuff. It's what I do. I'll bring you links to other things. Again, it's what I do. At one time, quite honestly, this podcast was the first in the world for wet shaving podcasts. I was out of the gate probably a month, maybe a month and a half before anybody else showed up. Somewhere in that neighborhood, anyhow, as I recall. I may be wrong, but I know I was first. And one of the things that's absolutely amazing is that the YouTube channels, there were other podcasts, and there were YouTube channels that blew up. Now there's a couple more podcasts, and forums and roundtables and meetups, and it's this hobby has just absolutely exploded. And the thing is that, at least from my perspective, I'm just a guy who has been excited about it and sharing it with you, sharing this journey, because it truly has been a journey. I still cut myself. I still, get lathers that aren't quite right. It's I still make mistakes and buy things that I shouldn't, that when you finally get it and you go, oh gosh, I shouldn't have got that. It happens. It's a journey. It is, I think anybody that is enjoying it, it's a journey for anyone. But, quite honestly, the other thing that I need to say is that, again, I wouldn't be here without you guys since I moved over to Libsyn. When I first started out with Podcast Garden, there were no analytics or anything like that. I had no idea how many people were actually listening to me. Yeah, they couldn't tell me. There was no way for them to know. They couldn't keep up with it. And the amount of downloads and the listeners that I have, that I've been able to actually see numbers for in the last year, has been, well, just absolutely phenomenal. And I can't thank you enough. It really is nice that somebody is listening. I said one time that if there were only 20 people listening, I would probably still do it. And to a certain extent, yeah, I probably would. But I don't think I'd have the same passion as I do with the numbers of you that are listening. So thank you very much for that. Thank you very much. Again, it has been fun. It has been enjoyable. I would highly suggest it. And whether it be wet shaving or anything else, if you think you would be interested in podcasting and have any questions about it, I'm not an expert. I've only been doing it for a while, and listening to some folks, I'm doing it wrong. But that's okay. I'm okay with that. But if you have any questions, I can at least give you my opinion, and I'll help you out any way that I can. And if it's guy-related stuff or, even women shaving stuff, that's cool too. Let me know, and if nothing else, we'll put an advertisement on the show for you. So again, thank you very much for being out there. Thank you for making this podcast what it is for me. It is the way I spend my Wednesday nights. It's I come home, have a bite to eat, start working on the podcast until I go to bed, and wake up in the morning hoping everything has downloaded okay and everything's good to go. And quite honestly, for the last year since I made the switch with podcast hosts, hasn't really been that much of a concern, which is nice. This time last year, it was Panic City. Again, it's all part of the journey. It's been good stuff. So a heartfelt thanks and many happy shaves. Well, that concludes this episode of the Brush and Soap and Blade Podcast. I hope you enjoyed listening to it as much as I enjoyed making it. If you have some suggestions or would like a topic covered, drop me an email at brushandsoapandblade@gmail.com or give me a call at 864-372-6234 or contact us on Twitter at Brush and Blade. You can also visit us at our blog, brushandsoapandblade.wordpress.com. As always, we're available on iTunes and Stitcher.